In today's episode, a married middle school principal gets a teacher pregnant and then hired someone to murder her. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to your midweek Wednesday episode. If you're new here, my name is Kai, and this is Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, the Wednesday edition. Before we begin, I want to remind you that this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs and Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want to be a sponsor and supporter of Love and Murder, then head on over to patreon.com/Love and Murder. Choose a subscription you'd like to be a part of, get bonuses and case extras, and be a supporter of Love and Murder. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. Now let's get into this midweek mini. In February of 2016, Cornelius Green, who worked at the Carr Lane Visual and Performing Arts Middle School in St. Louis, Missouri, was a married middle school principal. I would like to say he was happily married. However, while he was the middle school principal, he was having affairs with several other women. One of these women was Jocelyn Peters, who was a third grade teacher at Horace Mann Elementary School in St. Louis. The difference between Jocelyn and all the other affairs was that Jocelyn got pregnant and she kept the baby. She was 27 weeks pregnant at the time this case picks up. So, being that she's telling Mr. Cornelius that she's pregnant, he did one of the craziest things that anybody could think of. He called up one of his childhood friends, Philip Cutler, and asked him to kill Jocelyn, and he'll pay him $2,500. The reason for this, he told his friend, is because this pregnancy that is all this woman's fault and she refuses to get an abortion could ruin his marriage, could ruin his career, and could ruin his life. It's not my fault. Why do these things keep happening to me? So after Cornelius asked Philip to come to St. Louis and do this, Philip answered, quote, "Okay, that will work. You gonna be sending the, I don't know what this is, page? P-A, I think he misspelled something, but I don't know what it was supposed to be. He wrote P-A-C-G-E. So I'm guessing page? I don't know. Maybe he meant pay. Not really sure. So like the good principal he is, because we could clearly tell he's a good man. Like the good principal he is, Cornelius then stole $2,500 from the school funds and used that to pay Philip. He mailed this money, this cash, he mailed it to Philip, and the return address that he used on the package had the school's address. Oh my God. It was further part of the conspiracy that on or about March 8th, 2016 in Oklahoma, Cutler received the package sent by Green, accepting the cash in exchange for his planned killing of Peters and her unborn child. Cornelius then provided Philip with the keys to a car, which was his car, and also keys to enter Jocelyn's apartment. And then Cornelius went to Chicago so he could have an alibi. So on March 24th, Philip went to Jocelyn's apartment. Then Philip crept up to Jocelyn as she was in bed sleeping and shot her in the head with a .38 caliber weapon and used a potato as a silencer to muffle the sound of the shot. After he did that, he called Cornelius to inform him that the deed is done. That same day, Cornelius then bought a train ticket and came back to St. Louis, quote, so there would be verification that he was in Chicago at the time of the murder. When he came back, he went straight to Jocelyn's apartment and then called 911 like, oh my God, I just saw my girlfriend. She is dead. Well, you know what? He's trying to keep that on the DL. But then again, they would ask, why are you at her apartment? So who knows what the 911 call was, but he tried to pretend like, I just came here. I found her dead. Please send help. So police arrived, asked him a bunch of questions, and then they started the investigation. Because this a murder. They're not just gonna, take your word for it and say, okay, open and shut case, Johnson. Clearly he has nothing to do with it. So they started the investigation and everything started unraveling when police saw video surveillance near the apartment. Some of these people think they're so smart, they're stupid. What do you think they saw in the video surveillance? But Cornelius's car on Jocelyn Street at around 3 a.m., which, as investigators said, was, quote, within the range of the time of death of the victims. Remember, victims, not victim. She was pregnant. As for Philip, they saw Cornelius's car, but Philip wasn't off the hook. Police caught him trying to get a Kia Optima from the crime scene and detained him. What was the plan here? Use his car, that's clearly his car, I'm talking about Cornelius's car, to go commit the murder and then park your getaway car right next to the house? What? So when police caught him, they were like, hey, sir, we're doing an investigation here. You're a bit too close to the crime scene. We just want to ask you a couple questions. Just maybe, did you hear anything? Did you see anyone? Instead of being calm, cool, and collected, when police were walking up to him, Philip literally took 2 pieces of paper from a notebook that was in his pocket, ripped the pages out, and proceeded, you're never going to believe what I'm about to say, and proceeded to eat them. If ever there was a time that said, I am guilty, that was the time. So, of course, police detained him because that was uber suspicious, and it was right around an area where someone was murdered. So, you know how some of these articles are, it jumps from that just right into the trial. Either way, I guess none of them were able to keep up the story, especially when there were surveillance photos all over the place. You know, you could track the package of cash, especially use the school's address, text messages in your phone, like brilliant. Have as much evidence on or around your person as possible. Tell as many people as you know and as many people as you don't. Just brilliant. So, fast forwarding to the trial, Cornelius pled guilty to 1 count of murder for hire and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder for hire. And then, to top it off, the genius behind this whole plot accepted a plea deal. So the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office agreed to dismiss the state murder charges if Cornelius were to be sentenced to life in prison on the federal charges. If this plea deal hadn't have been taken, he would have faced the death penalty. And the plea deal was basically turn against your friend Philip and you'll get life instead of the death penalty. So of course, a coward like Cornelius, being that you couldn't handle situations like a man and decided that the answer was to murder a woman who is pregnant with your child nonetheless, accepted the plea deal and turned on his supposed, quote, childhood friend. So Cornelius himself will appear in the Eastern District of Missouri Court on June 5th for his sentencing hearing. And Philip was federally charged with murder for hire conspiracy and murder for hire. And he said, I didn't do that. He pled not guilty to all the charges. He said he didn't do it. Well, sir, what did we witness on the surveillance video? Why were you changing cars at around 3 a.m. on the night of the murder? Why did you eat 2 pages when we walked up to you? And why is your friend saying that he paid you $2,500 to do this? So on March 19th, 2024, with all his bluster and bravado, I didn't do it, Philip was found guilty of conspiring to murder for hire and murder for hire. He himself is scheduled to be sentenced on June 18, and he faces life in prison for each charge. Why is it that Cornelius would have gotten the death penalty, but the person who actually pulled the trigger and actually murdered 2 people only would get life in prison for each charge? That's very weird. So both of them are getting life in prison, and a mother and her unborn child are dead. But they get to keep eating and living off of taxpayers' money. Interesting. Now, Cornelius had a couple options. Number 1, he could have kept it in his frickin' pants and not cheated on his wife. Number 2, if he wanted to do all of that, if he wanted another woman, he could have divorced his wife. But I guess maybe he thinks as a school principal that wouldn't have looked good. But you know what else doesn't look good? Murder. Number 3, he could have definitely spoken to his wife and said, hey, I was out cheating. I was being whatever. and I got this woman pregnant, and you never know. Some women forgive. She might have forgiven him. They might have worked through it. Or she would have left him, and so be it. You weren't thinking about your wife. You weren't thinking about your career. You weren't thinking about anything except what was down in your pants when you were out cheating. But when you found out this woman was pregnant and she didn't want to have an abortion, which is completely her right, you decided that the best course of action was to murder her. You could have even just ignored her. Actually, you could have even just ignored her. There are people who do that. I don't know this woman. I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman. You could have just ignored her. All of that would have been better than murder. You murdered a pregnant woman, pregnant with your child. I don't know. And that is the case of Cornelius Green, Jocelyn Peters, and Philip Cutler. So today's poll question is, do you think school districts should implement stricter background checks and monitoring for school administrators and principals to prevent incidents like this one? Now, Spotify only allows a certain number of characters, so I'm going to have to condense that question to get that over there. But you can answer that question in our poll over at Spotify, in our WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp, or definitely in our After the Pod Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes below. I want to hear from you. I just want to hear your comments on how despicable this guy is, because I can't even. And I mean, I would say I would look out for the sentencing, but it seems like both of them are about to get life in prison while a woman and her baby are dead. Both of them are about to get fed 3 meals a day, a bed to sleep on, and literally housing for the rest of their life off of our taxpayer money. What I think is that whatever money, commissary, what they call it, they get in prison, all that goes to Jocelyn's family. That's what I think. They get nothing. You could eat this bread and water for however long your body is going to sustain you on bread and water. And you can sleep on this cold, hard floor, and that's going to be your life in prison. But there's some people out there that are going to say, I'm harsh, I'm mean, whatever, but a woman and her baby are dead. So let's go through your answers to last week's poll question. So last week was a father had rescued his daughter from sex trafficking, and then he murdered the alleged sex trafficker. My thing was, he shouldn't have taken vigilante justice into his own hands. Because at first I was all on his side, but then as the story unrolled, I realized that, yeah, he didn't actually have concrete evidence that this is the person that did this to his daughter. So I kind of changed my tune by the end of the episode. But that was still my poll question to you. Do you think there was room for mercy with the anguish that he had going on, or do you think he should face jail time? And 100% of y'all said show mercy. I'm still kind of on the fence about that. He could have totally just murdered an innocent man. If there was 100% concrete proof that this is the guy who did this to his daughter, then I would be on the show mercy part, but there was no concrete proof. So it could be that he rescued his daughter and then just murdered an innocent guy who had literally nothing to do with it. So that's why I'm on the fence about, I understand what you were going through, but then you can't just go out and murder somebody. That's kind of the equivalent of, this happened to this girl, he got her back, and then he just walked out of his house and then just murdered the first person he saw. That's kind of that equivalent. So that's why I'm like, I understand what he was going through, but you can't just murder whoever you feel like. So that's my thoughts on it. People who answered the poll said show mercy. You can definitely still talk about it. You can still go under the episode and leave a comment whether you think he should be shown mercy, or you think he broke the law and he should go to jail. Even though the poll question is closed, you can still go back and answer that. Leave a comment for me. I still want to hear from you, because this is kind of a touchy, I don't know where to sit on this, so I still want to hear from you about that episode. That was last week's Wednesdays. So anyways, that is all I have for you in today's midweek mini. Let me know your thoughts in last week's episode and on this week's episode. And I want to thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.